There's time for at least a few questions, so we'll try to get through a few questions relatively quickly. I'm going to take the moderator's prerogative and ask the first question, and that is this. It's a lot of excitement about APEC right now. The U.S. is hosting in 2011. President Obama has announced an Asia export strategy is an important part of economic recovery. And so it was fitting, I think, that President Obama announced the beginning of the TPP negotiations at APEC. I have two separate questions for each of you. Chairman Levin, we don't have fast track, and we haven't concluded the FTAs that were previously negotiated. Do you think that we'll have a challenge negotiating something new, having not what we started in the last several years? And Mr. Brady, my question for you is, should the May 10th agreement, the guide our negotiations with Colombia and Panama, be the blueprint for TPP negotiations?
You want me to start?
Please.
The answer to your question, I think, is no. There isn't fast track. We negotiated a major agreement, the Uruguay round, without fast track during much of the negotiation. The key to moving ahead is active consultation between the administration and the Congress at every important step. That was lacking in the negotiations in years under the Bush administration. I can say that while there were some phone calls and now and then a face-to-face, that the consultation was more pro forma than it was participatory. And that simply won't work. We made it very clear to the then administration that, for example, as to Korea, if there wasn't a real addressing of the non-tariff barriers, that the agreement could not be approved. And they simply went their merry way. And the result is we have this deadlock that needs to be addressed by meaningful discussions with Korea and between this administration and the Congress. So I think, in a way, what we've learned from these last few years is instructive as to how to proceed now. And I think learning those lessons will facilitate the discussions within TPP, not handicap.
Thank you. Mr. Brady, should the May 10th agreement guide our negotiations with TPP?
Perhaps. You know, as negotiated as really is key to the three pending trade agreements and perhaps as a framework for trade promotion authority in the future. I think this is an opportunity for us, both parties, to sit down with that as the basis to discuss how we move forward. And I do think, you know, just as not acting on the three pending agreements have really undermined, I think, our negotiating hand in Doha. Not having trade promotion authority with the prospect of it does that as well. The timing may not be right from a political standpoint, but at the end of the day, I think we're going to need, both parties are going to need, with the President, a framework on TPA that allows that USTR and the President to get out there and negotiate some very difficult agreements. And the truth is, it's becoming more complex. Each of these agreements are state-of-the-art, but we're tackling new issues and new services and new technologies we've not had to face in the past. So having, I think, a good, solid, bipartisan TPA can help us on all of these agreements as they move forward.
Thank you.
Let me just say a word. I'm livening this up a bit. This is such a big auditorium. It'd be better if we had the rule that was true when we were in school, right? Nobody could sit in the back seats. But, you know, as we look at WTO, at the Doha round, Kevin, I think it's important that they proceed. It's important to recognize why the problems to date. And it isn't the lack of negotiating authority. It's the difficulty of the issues and the need to face up to the issues. I mean, these are tough issues. Agriculture, the NAM negotiations, services. There has been very little progress in services. when Pascal Lamy says we're 80% there, I think it underestimates the challenges ahead in all of those areas, plus rules. And so I think a realistic approach to the Doha negotiations is to understand the complexity, to not understate them, not to gloss them over, and to have a very, very clear frontal assault on those outstanding issues, including important consultation between the administration and the Congress. There just wasn't that. I was on the COG most of the years. And this was a vehicle to have meaningful discussions between the administration and the Congress. And I must say that the discussions were basically sterile. And I think the new administration understands the complexity of issues and the need to consult as a way to work through them. And we're now beginning discussions within our own ranks, the Democrats in the House, which I hope we can expand to discussions among us as to where the Doha round is. I was there at the beginning. I don't think anybody contemplated, how many years has it been now? 8 years. I think we need to learn that the way to move ahead is to tackle these issues forthrightly and to have broad consultation.
Well, I was just going to say, we actually have more common people believe that. I believe Chairman Levin's exactly on target when he says where we're at is it's not ambitious enough at Doha. There has to be a lot more market access. There has to be a lot more stepping up on services. There is, I think, he and Chairman Kirk, or Ambassador Kirk and others understand this and are moving forward with it. But I do think leaving our pending free trade agreements without a clear path and clear timetable, I think it does undermine our hand there. If we can't finalize an agreement with Panama, how serious can we be about moving trade forward? If we're not willing to make the decisions here at home, I think how do we convince others to make difficult political decisions to open, to make those market access moves that we think are so important? And I really think, again, I'm very encouraged by the President's comments on TPP and South Korea. Very encouraged by what I hear from the White House. Not so encouraged about the actions that accompany that. And I really think with bipartisan support, we can help give them more strength as they negotiate in Geneva.
Let me make sure that we have a chance to take a couple of questions. I'll go ahead and open to questions from the audience if anyone wants to start off.
Hey, over here in the peanut gallery.
You to Henny.
The cheaper seats in the back.
Yes, the cheap seats in the back.
Do you have popcorn up there?
I can yell loud
enough, but thank you. I'm Jutta Hennig from Inside US Trade. I'm wondering, Mr. Levin, if you could elaborate a bit on your vision of possibly upgrading existing FTAs. Do you see, what are your thoughts on what structure this TPP should take? Should there be an agreement writ large, the TPP, or is it an arrangement, hub and spoke of various FTAs? What is your view and what is the most effective way to proceed in your mind?
Just quickly, I mean, they've just begun, and you raised some excellent questions which need to be resolved. And I think the various nations need to put their heads together. As we know, the U.S. has FTAs with many of the participants, right? We don't have them with all, especially the most challenging one would be a form of an FTA with Vietnam, and I've laid out some of the issues that have to be considered. I do think we're going to have to look at whether there's going to be a single integrated agreement or there are going to be an elaboration